So, okay, Martyr. I have to admit something because I've had so much going on that I'm only 2/3 of the way through this book, but I love it, and I have no
Oh
idea.
no, there's a big spoiler in the last third of the book. How can we talk about it without
No, you can
spoiling
talk
it?
about
We should put this off then. Let's wait. I mean,
No. No, talk about it, spoil it. I don't care. I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. In fact, I'm dying to know what happened. Because I have so many notes. I didn't write in my book because I got a signed copy. But so
It's
that's
one of the great twists of all time that I certainly didn't see coming.
Yeah, same here.
really wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could play a game and have you give you some hints and have you guess.
Try to guess.
Well,
Have you gotten to the part where he goes to the Brooklyn Museum to talk with this?
yeah.
Okay.
He's just
Well,
he's up for the third time with her.
Has he
Oh,
broken
okay.
up
Well,
with
you're very
Steve?
close to the twist then.
Oops, I just went away. Oh. I don't know what happened. Oh, there I am. I don't know what is going on. There's a lot of noise out here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just start this, and you all be able to make fun of me. But so I'm reading along, and he's talking to the artist in the museum, and she says, no one on that flight had something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, he didn't say anything about about his mom being on the flight. And so I thought, God, that's a terrible mistake. Why didn't some editor find that? And then you turn and he says, wait a minute, I didn't say anything about it. So I just finished reading the scene where he's talking to his friend at the, and talking, and then they come to the picture of his uncle.
Yes.
Dressed as the.
So James put two and two together. What do you guess is the twist? You're 80% there.
The
How
angel.
would she know? How would she know that?
Well, the only way that, at least from what I've read so far, the only way she could know is through the uncle. But how does she know the uncle? Or unless she was the angel of, I mean, I don't know. It's so weird.
You're very close. You're not quite there. There's another way besides knowing the brother that she could know. Did you read the part with the flashback where she met Layla?
Oh.
The mother met Layla?
The mother met Layla, yeah.
Okay. Given their marriages, what would you think the two women would want to do?
Get the hell out of there? That's made me.
Yes. Yes. So
90%.
90% there. So
just a little further, just a
what is
little
the
more.
possibility as to which woman between the mother and Layla was actually on the plane that was shot down?
I love that.
You got it?
Yeah.
I have to say that I just sat back when I saw that and I was just saying, I didn't see that. I mean, I was angling toward the fact that there was another sister. And so somehow there was communication about the uncle and that came through another area and someone that knew about the plane flight. But it took me a while and so when it hit me that it was the mother, and I said, geez.
Okay, but I have to admit, in this household, I guessed at it. And so I kept, would that really be the mother? So it kept me, even though I guessed at it, it certainly kept me reading because I thought, no, wait a minute, that would be too coincidental. But so
it
even if you
reminded
got
me
it,
of
you
the
kept
it
reading.
reminded me of the Emily Saint, what's her name? The book where everything came together with the time travelers and everything, and the music in the subway. What book was that?
You said Mandel, The Sea of Tranquility.
Yes, it reminded me of that. You can't believe he's going to bring it all together and land the plane, so to speak, at the end, but he does. I
Wow.
thought.
Mhm.
I
Well,
thought this was the most exciting book we read since Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
great.
Good.
Well, okay. So now that you've all spoiled it for me, thank you very much.
Oh, it's not spoiled. It's not spoiled.
Well, you invited it.
You figured it out yourself, James.
Well, okay, but I just watched. Helen and I hardly ever watch television, particularly something you have to watch more than one episode of. But we did watch this weird thing with Mandy Patinkin, sort of a mystery thing recently. And it had the same kind of situation that you guys just described, that there's a huge surprise at the end. And it turns out that, this, I won't give much away, except that there's a young woman who's been searching for 20 years for the
You're
reason.
talking about Homeland?
No, no, it's very recently. I mean, in the last month.
Oh, okay.
It has an impossibly ridiculous title. It's got like four more words than should be in the title. But anyway. Um,
Now you're frozen, James.
so that every. Oh, really?
You were going in and out. Now you're back.
Yeah. So frustrating. Well, talk. One of you is talking about Larry, you could start since you enjoyed it so much and see what.
Well,
Tell
I
us.
saw an interview with the author, and he's a very engaging young man. I guess he's been primarily a poet, but
Right.
when they were talking to him about how he put all this pop culture in with terrorism, and I mean, I certainly don't remember the United States accidentally shooting down this plane, but I loved all the chapter prologues where he had all the American military people saying, well, mistakes happen. How could we know? And what he said in these interviews, this, I don't know how old he was when it happened, but he was always haunted by what happened to these innocent people who died on this plane that nobody knows about or cares about, because of course, if they're Iranian, then we as Americans don't care about him. But the main character is such a wild character. I really didn't like him too much at the beginning, but by the end of the book, I really liked him because, and the shifting point of view from his mother, his father, himself is really brilliantly done. It's hard to believe that this is his first novel.
Yeah.
And I do like the former president being called President Invective. I thought that was really good.
Extremely shrewd. Yes, I agree. Could everybody else hear what Larry was saying? Because it was chopped up.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the only thing, but I'm trying to deduce one of the things that you said, Larry. Did you say you did not remember the Vincennes shooting down that plane?
Correct. That, I mean, what was it, 88, I think?
It's the summer of 80. Yeah, I can remember exactly where I was sitting watching the news when that came on, and I just thought,
Oh.
Well, my thought is we've had so many terrible terrorism and tragedies from 9/11 to now October 7th recently and everything else that it's hard to remember. But
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what other people thought.
Yeah. Who wants to say, who has something important or even unimportant to say? In fact, even that unimportant to say. Yeah.
Well, I keep lists, and I keep lists of books I've read. And so I finished this, and I told my wife I was done with it. And then it came time to put the list together and put a date on it. And I thought, I'm not done with this yet. So I went back and read the last 2 chapters again. And I've done that twice now. And I'm still parsing it out. So I think there's a lot in front of you yet, James, and I think you're gonna enjoy it. It's quite an ending. So I like the book overall. Yeah, and I enjoyed the experience of reading it. So yeah, it was certainly worth the effort. And I'm still working on it. I still don't have a date for it. So
Well, I read it in 3 days, which is unusual for me. And it just kept my interest all the way through. And when I got toward the end, I couldn't wait to get back and read the end. I think it drew me in that well.
It does read very quickly, doesn't it? I mean, same experience. I usually sort of make my way slowly through books, but I was sort of surprised. I mean, I'd look up and I'd think, I'm on page 170. How is that possible? I mean, it just seems to fly by. It's really weird.
I felt that too. And I mean, it's so obvious that he is a poet because the language is so lyrical. They were in the very beginning, I was sort of like, you would know he was a poet even if you didn't know he was a poet, because there was just, we had the red thing in his eye and he looks in the mirror and it's like the colors are blending like a Rothko painting. And I thought, oh my gosh, is every sentence going to have a metaphor? It never got, I just thought it was remarkable in so many craft ways of how, the plot, obviously, and I'm kind of where you are, James, and I literally at this afternoon, because I just started it 2 days ago, was cranking through the ending, and I'm gonna savor it, tomorrow and really go and read it. But there was just so many things that I thought he did.
Just let it go.
Or put it on mute. Can you put it on mute?
I can't see it enough to do that.
No worries.
Nancy, get a hold of this meeting. There's all this stuff happening.
I just thought it was also fun how, I mean, you could almost see him as a writer gathering all of the notes from the various jobs he's had in his life, the actor patient who does the medical bedside manner training for residents, to what his dad did at the farm. There were so many interesting things like that. And I also thought it was interesting because today is Nowruz. My friends who are Iranian, I happen to have some very close friends, and there's a boy named Sorab in here, and that's the son's name, but Nowruz, their New Year's today. So I just thought that was kind of interesting too. But I just thought the characters were so different. The voices were so kind of unique, and each of them had such great story. I just loved it. I can't wait to, as I said, kind of savor the ending.
Well, I'm a little bit different. It took me a while to get into it, and I think I was reading it too seriously and not kind of rolling with the punches a little bit. I kept getting angry at Cyrus, and I was glad when Z finally just told him to flip off and just, I'm out of here, just go on your own way. But it wasn't until like chapter 27 and 28, I think it was, where he talks about his alcoholism and that he wants to be the chisel and not the David, which kind of goes back, Terry, to your commentary about the poetry. piece of everything. And then the next chapter is just so touching. I was just nearly in tears about grace, about the true meaning of grace and all the different situations that his mom found herself in. I thought that was really quite a style to make that all be real. So then all of a sudden my hesitation about the book just like flipped. It was just like, oh, I really like this book now. Woohoo! I need to go back and, catch some phrases and put some post-it notes on it. So, yeah, it took me a while, but now I'm a believer. So, I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Who else has some? Karen took her camera off. I wonder if something. Are you there, Karen? Or Michelle? Do you have something you want? Oh,
Charlotte,
I have.
can you hear her?
This is Charlotte. I don't know if our audio's on.
No.
No.
It is.
But
Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you.
okay. Then the one thing I wanted to raise was, and it probably was because I watched the PBS episode on Dante the last 2 nights, Sunday and Monday night. And if you haven't seen it, I would recommend you go back and watch it. So in the president invective,
Yes.
was described as being relegated to the hell and the lowest level of hell of Dante's circle. And that struck me, and I thought, because I was having trouble with these dreams and the magic realism of the whole book and how that was set up, and it's not usually something I like. But all of a sudden, it occurred to me that it was very much like Dante's poem of the visions and the travel through hell and purgatory, and finally getting to the spheres of heaven. And at the end, the last pages are about light and big pools of light. And that's, of course, how Dante described the spheres of heaven. So I don't know if anybody else sees that as being something. And with Akbar being a poet, it maybe makes some sense, but I don't know if it makes sense to anybody else.
We lost James, but I think what you said made perfect sense, Charlotte.
And I feel like there are all kinds of references that I missed. I know there were some I had to look up. I feel like he's incredibly well read. So I think that it's just kind of a literary minefield.
I want to know if anyone can tell me, is it true that the Mona Lisa is famous because it hung in Napoleon's bedroom? Is that a true art history fact? And that it's not even on canvas, it's painted on a poplar plank, scrap wood. Da Vinci would have been horrified to know 500 years later it would become his most famous piece. Does anyone know if that's true?
I think I know. I've heard that the wood back, the poplar back, but I didn't hear. I can't confirm or say any knowledge of the Napoleon reference.
Well, that would be a great piece of trivia if it's true. I haven't had a chance to look it up.
But Larry, I want to thank you for your your questioning of James early on. It did show your teaching experience.
Yeah, well, when you taught 8th grade for 30 years, you got to come up with the questions to pull it out of them. Because I was trying to get everybody involved, not just the 3 kids who would raise their hands.
And done the reading, right?
But still, I was totally blindsided by that twist. I did not. I knew I was so anxious for him to get there on day 4. And it went from heartbreaking to wow. Because her galleryist was a great character at the end that we didn't
Yes.
really know before. Her story was really interesting.
It was.
Okay, James is back, so don't do the spoilers. Okay. I know Larry usually says his favorite paragraph, but this one for me, from on page 124 to 125, chapter 11, I think it was. I just had to stop and read this quite a few times because I feel like this is just kind of like where the world is. I've heard people say smell is the sense most attached to memory, but for me, it's always language. If language can be thought of as a sense, which of course it can be. Compared to even the dullest dogs, humans can smell nothing, but compare us with what? A monkey who can say apple with her hands? And we are the gods of language. Everything else just chirping and burping. And how fitting, too, that our superpower as a species, the source of our divinity, stems from such a broken invention. It was invented, of course, language. The first baby didn't come out speaking Farsi or Arabic or English or anything. We invented it, this language where one man is called Iraqi and one man is called Iranian, and so they kill each other. Where one man is called an officer, so he sends other men with heads and hearts the size of his own to split their stomachs open over barbed wire. Because of language, the sound stands for this thing, that sound stands for that thing. Invented sounds strutting around, certain as roosters. It is no wonder we got it so wrong. I thought that was just.
That's a great choice, Nancy, and it applies to just about everything going on in the world today, from the Middle East to the immigrants to the president invective using words like vermin and their animals and not people. I mean, obviously he must have written this before the Middle East blew up and some of this other stuff, but it seems very prophetic.
I agree. Well, Nancy,
Yes.
if you go a little further down on that page, this one made my hair stand on end. It says it's when he and his sister are running to the water, and she's in the water now. And he says, "For a moment I lay searching for her, but she vanished almost the second she hit the water. Arcs bobbing the ice chunks out from where she went in, like sound waves searching for an ear. And then, before I could even process what had happened, before I could make a decision to be brave or a coward, before I could arrive at an inflection point for the rest of my life." I mean, that when I just thought, we have those few, and you can't realize if you go the opposite way, it would, I would never gotten recovered from my bad voice. It's really great.
James, you're going in and out.
Okay, sorry. I quit.
But I'd like to contrast that with the organic scene of her dealing with the night wedding and finding her brother standing over her and causing that. So you really have this really complex family issues.
I kept waiting for that to come back up when the brother was talking, but I ended up feeling that was his bad karma, why the rest of his life was so terrible, because, his sister beat him in a race that shouldn't have been. I mean, he gave her so much trauma. That was truly shocking when that was revealed. So the other thing that I wanted to say, I can't believe I read a book that had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lisa Simpson, and I love this little Hamilton joke where on page 309 she says, this is Arcadia, my final installation, death speak, is a way of being in the room. Literally being in the room as it happens, which if you're not a fan of Hamilton, you wouldn't get the little joke.
Yeah.
But my favorite passage was the part about Hamlet, where this is on 267, and this is Cyrus saying, his whole life was a conspiracy of other people helping him, other people teaching him this or that. He felt like Hamlet, just moping around, waiting for the world to, I know I'm going to mispronounce this word, assuage his grief, petulantly soliloquizing and fainting while everyone else fed him bananas and candy bars. Hamlet died at the end, of course. The rest is silence, Hamlet declared, though he also demanded his best friend tell everyone else his story. Cyrus felt that full of shit. So I wanted to say, Adele, I think you came to the right conclusion. I don't think he wanted us to like Cyrus in the first half of the book, but his arc was amazing.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And then spending the time with Rumi too, the dad and Rumi, that whole thing. I mean, I got to thinking, I guess maybe James is back, but I got to thinking, well, I wonder how he would direct that.
Well, wasn't Shams the beloved of Rumi? Wasn't that one of the name of someone that Rumi was attached to?
Yeah, I think so, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I am trying to be, I just can't figure out where I'm positioning myself is causing all the disruption in our, but it's, yeah, I thought the way he used his dream characters was just brilliant.
Yeah.
And the conversations that they had. I had one other one. That's a great one, Larry, the one you just read, but of course I hadn't gotten to that point, so it sort of ruined it for me, but I don't want you to worry.
Well, James, let this be a lesson. Never come to book club without finishing the book. I am in the midst of a hectic re-election campaign against a far-right opponent on April 2nd, but the last 2 nights I read the last 200 pages of the book because I could not come to book club without the book being read. And then equally exciting was last night when I went and read all of Nancy's wonderful commentary on Bridge of what's happening to her husband. And I just got to say, Nancy, there's a book there. You're writing the pictures, the humor, the tragedy. It would make a fantastic book. Hopefully it's going to have a good ending. But you really did a brilliant job. It really was amazing. Do you have any update for us? Because it ended like a week ago.
I know. I owe you one. But I mean, I don't want to like stick it to James, but my husband had a near fatal accident and I read the book. He's not laughing.
I think he's frozen.
He's going to be he's going to pretend to be if he's not.
Yeah, there you go.
In my book club, in my small book club of like 5 people, if someone hasn't read the book, we refer to Animal House and say they're on double secret probation.
Yeah, last last month we had book club and the day after my life
all of
changed.
them. Darn it. Oh, well.
All right. What were we saying? I don't even know what we were saying before. Double secret probation. Were you saying something, James?
Oh, no, I was just gonna, there was a very short paragraph that I really loved, and it's just close to where have read to it. It's when they're sitting on the wall looking at the zoo.
Oh,
Mhm.
She says, 2 giraffes were chewing lazily, totally uninterested in us. The largest of the 3 was on the ground sleeping with its giant neck looped around to its backside. It looked like a colossal purse. I just love that. Each giraffe had the long eyelashes of horses and those same sad eyes, like they knew they weren't made for this world, or worse, like they knew they were. And I just, that's such a great. There's a Beatty story from the 70s that uses that same image of sad eyes, where a man is talking to his daughter, and she's about 9, and she wants to know why the dinosaurs disappeared. And he tells her that, who's calling me now? He tells her that the weather changed and the dinosaurs slowly shrunk, and they shrank and their brains got compressed, and slowly the dinosaurs turned into horses. And that is why horses have such sad eyes, because they were once something else. It's just, when a writer gets it exactly right, it just stays with you your whole life. It's just, who's calling me? Stop it. Go away.
Everyone that's read a passage out loud, it really seems like this book would be a great book to read the whole thing aloud. Do we know who did does he have somebody reading his book on Books on whatever?
Oh,
it really,
book? Yeah,
it really seems to lend itself to being read out loud, because he's got so many different voices, and it is a hysterically funny book while dealing with such horrible tragedy.
Let's see. It is read by Arian Moyen.
Do we know?
I don't know if that's. I'm sure that's a voice actor. Yeah, not read by the author.
I have to. Oh, I'm back. I'm missing everything everybody's saying just keeps being cut up. So that's too bad. I apologize. I know I missed some huge laugh, but I don't know what it was.
It was that
it might have been at your expense. So
how surprised! I'm amazed. No, that can't be right.
I'll tell you later.
No one's ever made fun of me in my entire life. This has never happened before. I'm shocked.
Well, we won't make you listen to the whole tape. Let's just say that Nancy shared, even though her husband nearly died and had this horrible accident, she still got the book read.
That's true. Good point. I know. I knew I couldn't make much of not having.
So James, do you want to share what terrible things have been going on in your life that prevented you from finishing the book?
No, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. I ordered a pair of shoes and they sent the wrong.
Okay, well, that's tragedy of a whole nother level. Can you exchange them?
Oh, he's gone again.
Frozen.
Now he's frozen.
Oh, there he is.
Can you exchange the shoes, James?
That was made up, Larry. Nothing is happening. I'm just,
Well, of course you could exchange them.
Uh,
no,
So,
I'm wearing it. Actually,
James, you might need to put on your earmuffs or something, but because we don't want to ruin it for you, but oh my gosh, this ending. I just
Yeah,
wanna know
exactly.
why she did what she did. Or didn't do.
Well, and has everyone seen the documentary on that performance artist who did that thing? It was referenced in the book. I forget her name, but she famously sat at a museum and stared and talked to people.
Was Abramovich?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. That's who it is. Yeah. Whew. I'm going to have to listen to the whole thing later to get all the jokes because I'm not getting any.
There's one other thing that occurred to me. I struck me during the chapter of where grace was talked about so eloquently and so beautifully. And then I remember reading that he lives in Iowa City, and that prompted my wonder does he and Marilyn Robinson have a lot of conversations because of her perspective and her writing. And then I noticed that one of the things he did, someplace I read, well, in the back, he's the editor of the Penguin Book of Spiritual Verse, 110 poets on the divine. So that can explain a lot of especially that chapter on grace, I would think.
Yeah. No, he's clearly extremely well read. But he uses that lightly, I think, because he in playful ways most of the time. You know,
Okay, here's a quote that should be copied and put up at Arcadia Bookstore on page 316. Creativity didn't live in my brain any more than walking lived in my legs. It lived in every painting I ever saw, every book I ever read, every conversation I ever had. Don't you think that would be a great thing to put up in the bookstore?
I do. I do. And I also like that following sentence. The world was full enough that I didn't need to store anything inside myself. Because we store whether we know it or not. But I also, that whole idea of sonder, you know, of the awareness of that everybody's life as you walk by somebody on the street, you know, that understanding that everybody's life is full of meaning and full of stories, and that's such an important aspect, I think, of generous living. Let's put it that way. Even I suppose, well, no, I may have to draw a limit on certain people, but you know, it's really an amazing concept.
Yeah, so I don't know if he's a professor at Iowa at the writers workshop, or if he just went there and stayed. You know, so many.
Yeah, I would assume. Well, I would assume he teaches, although you know some people don't like to teach. If they can get away with it, they don't. They can live without teaching, but good question. I guess we could go to the Iowa Writers Workshop and see if he's on the faculty. But
I'm Googling him to see what it says.
okay.
He's 35 years old. He's an Iranian American writer. And it says his occupation is a poet and a novelist. So it doesn't sound like he is He was born in Tehran in 1989, moved here when he was 2, grew up across the US, including New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Indiana. He received his bachelor's from Purdue, his MFA from Butler, and his PhD in creative writing from Florida University. He is a faculty member at the University of Iowa, formerly Purdue. He also teaches in the low residency fine art programs at Randolph College and Warren Wilson College.
Right. Now, somebody might have said this before, but wasn't his mother killed in that event? His own mother?
Not if he was born in 1989.
Yeah, it could have. Oh no, because it was in July. Yeah, I was thinking.
He's married to the American poet Paige Lewis. It doesn't say anything about his mother, but it does say he's in recovery and writes openly about his struggles with addiction.
Mm-hmm.
No, I knew there's just no way that book could be written in the way it was written without that being accurate.
I actually did think that for me, that was very enlightening. Fortunately, not having people in our family dealing with addiction or being exposed to it, I did, as personally, I learned a lot from his descriptions, and could see how his description of just being not really living or always being sad made a lot of sense from the way he described his life.
Great.
All right, James, you're gonna stick your fingers in your ears so we can talk for 1 minute?
Sure.
Okay, do it. Okay, so why did she not tell him?
Wait, who told him what?
Exactly.
I think because she knew she was going to end her life soon, and it would have been too painful and difficult to try to explain everything. I mean, look how hard it was for her ex-galleryist. And, but yeah, I mean, you were so excited for him to talk to her on day 4. And how about the whole thing where he fainted and he's having all those weird visions and everything?
Mm-hmm.
I was ready for him after I saw the fainting and everything, I was ready to say, okay, whoops, he's going to die. And then we're going to figure out how this whole thing ends. But yeah, that was another part of the surprise.
Well, I was dreading him killing himself by the end of the book, but I felt, to me, the last thing I expected was a happy ending with him finally being open to Z's love. And it sounded like, I felt like he was going to start living his life both for his mother and his father. And this is on 319. Let's see. How had he been so oblivious? Love was a room that appeared when you stepped into it. Cyrus understood that now and stepped. And I have to say, as someone who was made fun of when I wore my red Crocs as mayor to be with Ronald McDonald at a McDonald's ribbon cutting, I loved that Z smiled, made a show of jogging over to Cyrus, though he moved slowly to not slip on the ice in his ridiculous Crocs. And how Cyrus had the same pair of shoes, so he didn't have to think about what he was going to put on his feet every day.
Well, I'm not gonna argue with anybody that made fun of you for wearing Crocs, Larry, so sorry.
Well, I'll go.
That's all right. That's all right. I see my former students. What do you remember about 8th grade language arts? You wore Birkenstocks with socks in the winter. I'm like, that's what you remember? Some of them remember reading The Telltale Heart or seeing the short film on the lottery or reading Ray Bradbury's The Sound of Thunder, but they pay attention to footwear when they're teenagers.
Were you gonna say something, Al?
I was just gonna go out on a limb here and say my reading of the end, and like I said, I'm not convinced of this yet, but I was pretty sure that was his death he was describing. And I think in a way he took Z with him. And then the slip over, sorry, James, you have to do this again. Then when you go to the next chapter, and it's the height of his mother's love for this woman, and that she's describing that was the best it ever got for them. And I thought, well, that's what it is for he and Z right now. And so he was sort of, he understood, and he was going out at the top. He knew what it was, he knew what it was about, he knew what his life was about. But I sort of took that whole thing at the end as him sort of fading away and not, I don't know where else he could have gone. I mean, he wasn't doing drugs. And I mean, the whole book was clear that he was done with that stuff. So how do you slip into that sort of, it wasn't a delusion like it was with Yellowface. It was something else, and something else was happening. And I thought it was him capturing his last thoughts before he died, but I could be wrong about
Al, I thought the ending could be ambiguous. I thought it was ambiguous.
Well, it is. Yeah, that's the problem.
No, I think, Al, I think you could be exactly right, or I could be right that it's like a metaphor for finally finding love and acceptance and being at peace with himself. But I'm rereading it now. I don't think it's clear. I agree with Charlotte. I think it's intentionally ambiguous.
And there seems to be a lot of physical pain associated with it. There's something about the foot that happened earlier in the book, and I could never find it. But that pain coming up through his foot again and things like that, just there were some physical things going on that I thought pushed me in that direction. Like I said, I've read the ending twice now and trying to figure out how this all fits together. So sorry, James. Anybody else wants to, what do you
Well,
think?
I want it to be what Larry is saying, but when I first read it, I thought that the same thing, Al, well, not exactly the same, but I did think it was not really, it was like too good to be true. So, but I definitely want it to be more what Larry said. I mean, I think that would be a happier thing. And the other thing and I apologize, I did have to leave for a few minutes, so I don't know if you already talked about the passages from the Book of Martyrs that he, starts, not every chapter, but many of those. But I was thinking there was going to be more about that. I thought it was really going to be more about his efforts to put that together and write that. And, but they stop at a certain point, which is what I think led me to think maybe at the end it was that that's as far as he got, like he didn't really get the whole thing put together, the Book of Martyrs. Mm-hmm. So but I didn't go back to really see if all the dates, because sometimes those are dated. So I'd have to go back and do that yet.
So what do you guys think the coda meant though then? You see, the coda ended on such a positive note. That's what made me think that his ending was also positive, because Sang is remembering being in the gallery with his mother and her son, and she didn't understand the idiom when he said, "I can't help laughing," and she yelled, "Laughing doesn't need your help." And they all started laughing. And then I love the last sentence of the book. "The three of us stayed there all night in my gallery working. singing along to radio songs we knew, dancing to the ones we didn't, laughing at everything, all of it, the whole absurd production suddenly blossoming straight into our faces on purpose. So even if you're right, Al, and he did end his life, but you see, the reason I don't think Z wanted to end his life.
I don't either, and that's sort of a puzzle. You know, Z was with him.
Unless they were
when
supposed to
that
be
happened.
drowning in that pond, but that was the uncle who was traumatized by the pond race, not Cyrus.
Yes.
And then if you, a lot of that scene of that last scene was the earth, the noise and trembling and the earth moving. And that was reminiscent of the episode with his mother and Layla.
Yes, going there. And I had looked at it from the beginning, and I was just operating under the assumption that I'm going to read this through, and he's going to make a martyr, and he's going to become a martyr. And so as I kept reading it, I kept that in mind until the end. And I did really think that it resolved itself then when he discovered that his mother was alive. So his primary reason for pushing himself to be a martyr was eliminated. And so that gave me then the feeling, well, it had ambiguity in it, but it leaned more toward the positive, that they just kind of righted the ship and went on.
Okay.
Lived happily ever after.
Well,
We
what
need
was
to
the,
read some reviews.
what was the whole thing about that? Was it him just having, what was that? I mean, what triggered it? He was cold. He was very cold. He'd been sitting out on that bench all day in sub-zero weather. I mean,
Right.
I thought it was transcendence because of finally accepting Z's love and accepting his mother's decision to do what she did and how she did it.
okay.
But I agree with you, Al, you may be right. It's not clear.
I just had the feeling that he had done what he wanted to. He recognized and he knew he had come to some sort of end and some sort of understanding. And I don't care if I think the thing about buying the circles of hell and going to the light and all that stuff sort of pushed me in that direction too. You know, like, all right, I mean, maybe that is what he was doing. I don't know. I mean, like I said,
But I thought
not
there
sure
were a
I'm done
lot
with
of
the book
times
yet
in the
because I
book
haven't
where I thought there were a lot of times in the book where people push back on his being a martyr, that really, that you should value life, that you're going to die anyway. And so, because that was his focus, he wanted to be a martyr, but he wanted to do it in a way that showed his life mattered. And the reason I'm leaning towards positive is I felt he learned the lesson from his mother, from Z, that life was worth living. I mean, she was literally dead, the person she was, and created this incredible life from nothing. I do like in the acknowledgments where he thanks someone for letting him call the book Martyr ! It reminded me of Jeb Bush's presidential campaign where he had the signs that said Jeb Bush !
Why do you think he ended the book with this skipping back in time to you know, the woman who loved his mother? I mean, that I also thought was sort of like an indication that maybe he wasn't around anymore. That he had reached the peak. I mean, this is, to her, that was the peak of their love. That what they're describing here in the last chapter. And that is almost what he had with Z when they described that. So he's sort of, to me, it seemed like he was describing two peaks in these relationships. And also, to me, it seemed like being in love with artists sounds like a really hard thing to do. Because they got a lot of things going on and you ain't one of them. And that's sort of how I balance that off. But I couldn't see him going, well, I don't know. I don't know yet.
So Al, I think we need to give James the homework of finishing the book.
You tell
and
us how it
next
ended,
month
would you?
coming back and telling us which interpretation is best.
And no reading any reviews, you got to do it on your own. Right?
Well, I think
Reviews
we should
didn't
include
help.
Terry as well.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm happy to take one for the team. Yeah, I'll do.
I think it must be the sign of a great book that everybody really enjoyed it and was challenged by it, even though it doesn't have a conclusive ending or it's open to interpretation. So I think we'll call this one a win for the month.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But we can talk about it again next month if anybody has something they want to.
Well, I will concede if he did die by suicide, he died happy. That's what I would say.
I'm not sure it was suicide. I mean, he
Oh,
didn't-
okay.
Could have been he little matchstick girled himself sitting out cold like that.
I don't know. There's that much water in Prospect Park, is there?
Don't you
it
have
was
to
a
kill
strange, James,
yourself?
it was a different ending. You just
Al,
start
don't
the
you have
next
to
meeting
kill
by
your-
telling us what you thought.
Al, don't you think you have to kill yourself to be a martyr?
Oh yeah, somebody has to.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Nancy.
So next month, we're doing a 180 here. We're going to do a nonfiction. We're going to read Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond, who also wrote Evicted, which was set in Milwaukee. So this book, I'm holding the hardcover. It comes out in paper next week. So we thought this would be an interesting one to read during an election year. It's really enthralling. I listened to an interview he did with Trevor Noah from the Daily Show, a podcast. It was amazing, but it also, makes just totally discuss you about the wealth, and if the richest.
What is the title? What is the title?
Poverty by America.
Poverty by America. Okay.
And you should read many of the footnotes are hugely illuminating. They're end notes. They're not footnotes, but they're really, really good. I heard him interviewed last year when the book came out by a guy out here in San Francisco, and at one point the guy asked him a question, and Matthew Desmond said, "Oh my God, you even read the end notes." They're really good, full of information. It's a very sobering book, but it's really an important book. And then what happens after that, Nancy?
Okay, so that is April 17th. You're not going to believe it, but we picked two books. So May 15th, we're going to read James, or as I call it, Jim, James by Percival Everett. And I don't have one to hold up for you because we have sold all of ours, but this is a retelling of Jim from Tom Sawyer. And
No, Huckleberry Finn.
Or Huckleberry Finn. Melanie read this and loved it, right?
Yeah. Oh, people are just loving the book. And the one thing about the book that I have read a little bit about is, his way of dealing with the part of Huckleberry Finn that so many people have trouble with now, which is the vernacular that Twain chose, which was perfectly apt, quote unquote, for his time. But in Everett's telling of it, James teaches other Black Americans how to speak in a way that white people will try not speak kind of, rather than the way they speak normally. It's so good. Examples of, and it's a way of hiding, it's a way of concealment, so that you aren't questioned in the way that the white owner might treat you, or etc.
All right. So
Did you
Poverty by
hear-
America, excuse me, April 17th, and James by Percival Everett, May 15th.
And he's the one who wrote the book that American Fiction, the movie, was based on. So
Yes.
Oh,
read
that's
the-
right. Yes. So
Yeah.
very exciting.
So
That's
Nancy, when is your husband coming home?
Tuesday.
Wow. Good luck. Good luck.
I
I
know.
want to read about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do that. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good discussion.